Someone say something.
That's a familiar sound.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, celebrating Lidia Yuknavitch's novel Rust, here with Esmé Weijun Wang. Let's give it up for Lidia. And over the moon to welcome both of these writers here tonight. This is a real star on our event calendar here. I'm Cara, I'm the events coordinator here for Green Apple, and I'm so appreciative of you all for joining us this evening. I will be very brief in my store business for tonight so that we can get to the fun part as soon as possible. But I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to check out our event calendar on our website. If you enjoy events such as these, you might want to check out our full event calendar on our website at greenapplebooks.com/event. Our next upcoming event is this coming Tuesday, July 5th. We have the pleasure of hosting Mungjin's book launch for her new story collection, Self-Portrait with Ghost. And that's going to be in partnership with the Ruby, and it's going to be at the Ruby's new space. So that's an RSVP event, but entry is free. We just ask that you RSVP so we know how many dumplings to bring. It's going to be a really fun book launch with a reading with Mung and Mimi Locke, and there's going to be a dance party. So it's a very exciting one for us. Do check that out on our calendar at greenapplebooks.com. We have a full calendar on our website, and all of our events are free unless stated otherwise. So that being said, please do buy books. Please do buy books from us if you are able. We're an independent bookstore in San Francisco in the year 2022. So if you are able to, we are always appreciative that we know you're not always able to, but if you are, we always appreciate it. If you've been here before, you have absolutely heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as independent booksellers, but you support the authors who wrote these books. And then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. So if you are able, please do buy books. I can think of one or two that you might want to buy this evening for yourself and all of your loved ones. So the last bit of business before we get to the fun part, thank you for keeping your mask on during the between sips of your beverage. We appreciate it. Our ventilation isn't great, and we want to give our authors the opportunity to take their masks off should they choose. So please do imbibe, highly encourage you imbibing, but just keep your mask on between sips. We're trying to move forward as safely as we can. So thank you for being cool about it. All right, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first author joining us. First, Esmé Weijun Wang is the author of the New York Times bestselling essay collection, The Collected Schizophrenias, and the novel The Border of Paradise. She received a Whiting Award as well as the Gray Wolf Nonfiction Prize and was named by Granta as one of the best young American novelists in their decennial list. All right. I love it. Born in the Midwest to Taiwanese parents, Esmé is the founder of the Unexpected Shape Writing Academy for ambitious writers living with limitations, and can be found at esmewang.com. Please give it up one more time for Esmé. And last but most certainly not least, Lidia Yuknavitch is the nationally best-selling author of the novels The Book of Joan, The Small Backs of Children, and Dora, a Head Case, the story collection Verge, and the memoir The Chronology of Water. She's the recipient of 2 Oregon Book Awards and has been a finalist for the Brooklyn Public Library Literary Prize and the Penn Center USA Creative Nonfiction Award. She is joining us from Portland, Oregon, and I just found out is from the Bay Area originally, so welcome back. We're celebrating the novel press tonight. Please do give it up once more for Lidia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I was born here is the idea. My most strong images are Mount Tamalpais, and we live by Stinson Beach in a small, strange place. And so when I come here, it gets in my body pretty immediately. And I have, like some of you, swum in the waters. Really quickly, if you feel like it, and you can you stand up for a second? And can you just, as a group, try saying this with whatever voice comes to you. I'm still alive when
I'm still alive.
Okay, Linda. Ready? Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3.
I'm still alive.
A little louder.
I'm still alive.
Okay, now no one's listening or watching.
I'm still alive.
Thank you. Thank you. You just performed a polyphonic novel, which is what I've written here. And also just how beautiful that we're here and how complex, and us too. So thank you for that. It reminds us we have bodies and we're humans and we're existing. That's enough sometimes. I'm going to read some little excerpts and then just stop. Because this book has many voices and many characters, but not as many as Leslie Marmon Silko in Almanac of the Dead, who had 63 characters, which was my mentor and model. So you're getting off really easy. There's like, what, 7? I don't know, something like that. So I'm going to start off with voices in chorus that open the novel, and they're laborers. And I have a love affair with workers and laborers in my lifetime. So that's the voice I started with. We dreamed we were hers. The body of us thought that because we built her, we belonged to her. We built her in pieces from our bodies, from the stories we held and the stories before that and the stories that might come. She arrived by boat. When the ship Issair finally reached port, we wept. Even the sailors wept. They'd been convinced that the tempests they'd endured on board would drown them in the ocean, and the cargo with them. The deck of the ship was nearly a farmer's field in size. The hold had been covered with huge black tarps for the journey. When the sailors pulled the tarp back, the hold looked dark and foreboding, and I was asked to jump into that dark, like plunging into the ocean's deep. Down in the hold, my eyes began to adjust. Gigantic crates the size of houses filled with pieces of the Colossus. A woman in pieces, crated and shipped. One by one, we found her body parts: hair, nose, crown, eyes, mouth, fingers, hand, foot, torch. She had arrived in pieces. We were the impossible, possible voice of bodies. So that's a little teaser of a communal voice that opens the book. And that voice returns as a collective several times in the book, for better or worse. And those laborers love each other, which is another important theme for me. And there's a character in the book who is not a main character, no matter what anyone says. You heard it here. She's not a main character, but she is a carrier. And what I mean by that is, instead of following the plot of exploration and discovery and colonization as a trope, instead of following the hero's journey, I created a carrier trope, which might mean different questions like, what do we hold? How do we transfer what we hold so that someone else can hold it near us? How do we hold and carry ideas in each other? How has the planet held us? How do animals hold us? What's holding And so the entire philosophy and emotional questions change the journey if you move away from the hero's journey, which has a very different trajectory. And so I made a character who's a carrier, and I'll give you a little touch of her, okay? And her name is Laisve, in case you're wondering, how the hell do you pronounce that? It's Lithuanian, and it depends on the Lithuanian person you speak to. But one version is Laisve. It almost has 3 syllables. Names in America, it's a thing. How to say them. Laisve carried a penny in one hand and a big blue plastic letter P about the size of her head under her arm, stopping at every corner to peer around the edges of buildings, looking out for trouble. In the brook, on her side of the seawall, trouble could rise quickly, but a good trade was worth it. To make a good trade, a carrier needs not to care about transgressing time. A carrier needs to slip her way into the barter, to use objects and signs and things in unorthodox ways. Laisve whispered the names of trees as she passed them: Norway maple, green ash, Callery pear, London plane, little leaf linden, honey locust. She stepped over roots protruding from what used to be sidewalks. She never, ever stepped on any crack on the sidewalk because children are wise. What used to be apartments and businesses yawned at her with their abandoned open doors or winked through cracked window eyes. Her neck skin tingled now and then. She knew she was breaking the rules wandering the brook. She knew her father Astor would be angry or terrified. She'd noticed adults had something called feelings. I'm going to stop with her there. Then there are these couple of people who were a delight to write about, because one of them is named Frederic, and it's a dude who designed the Statue of Liberty historically. And I have no allegiance to facts because I'm a novelist. My allegiance is to the imagination. And so I conjured a lover or a muse who is not satisfied being the object of his artistic invention. And it's his cousin, and they are hopelessly sexually intertwined. So deal with it. So I'm not going to read you his little excerpt. I'm just going to read you, they communicate to each other via letters in epistolary form, novelistically. And so he sent her drawings of this statue he's trying to create. And he hasn't landed on how to make this statue of this liberty. And this is her response to his drawings. Are you with me?
Yes.
My brilliant cousin, my obscene genius, my Adonis, Frederic. I'm in love with the drawings of your Colossus, with your mind at work. If you should ever stop writing me, I will throw myself out of this window into the river, sink myself like a stone statue. The might of your imagination, you God, your drawings give me a world of visions, enough to palpitate a heart, to throb a cleft. What a gorgeously unholy, perfect union we have made together. Of the 3 you sent, here are my personal assessments. Drawing number 1. Too Egyptian, my dear. This is not the Suez Canal, my dove. I understand your disappointment at losing that project, but still. And she's not really a lighthouse, not in the traditional sense, right? I think your imagination is exoticizing, my dear, or else that trip you took with your delicious painter friend, Jean-Léon Jerome, to Egypt has left you aching and throbbing. Drawing number 2. What has this majestic androgyne got in its hand? Is that a broken chain? Those poor dim-witted, God-addicted souls, still tortured by their loss in the Civil War, will consider this heresy. They'll protest, riot, try to tear it down. This bawling, sprawling infant of a country will never get over losing its power to enslave and slaughter other humans as if they were objects. We're built from it. They'll fight you on it. But oh my God, how much I love you for doing that. How I love those perfect broken shackles held in the air for everyone to suck, to fuck. I love you. Drawing number 3. I'm not going to lie to you. I miss her breasts. Where are they? Though I do admire the masculinity of her face. Of them all, this may be my favorite. How are you? Okay. There are several more characters with bunches of weirdness going on, but that's a teaser sampler for you.
I would just like to say that was probably the best reading I've ever experienced. Can we just like give her a hand right now? Instead of me asking you questions, you should just like read the whole book and we'll just stay here. We'll stay here all week. Okay, so my first question is, so I'm always interested in the way that writers time the writing of their books, and you've written many books. How long have you been working on Thrust? And do you have an approximately similar process for each novel, or is each novel a completely different adventure?
I'm interested in that too with other writers. They're all different. With Thrust, it was about a 5-year process. If I'm lying, my husband can go more. 4.5-year process. So before COVID, and then during COVID and post-COVID, Thrust was coming. Small Backs of Children was about a 6-year process. Book of Joan was about a 4-year process. The fastest novel I've ever written was a 1-year process, but it was a farce, like old school classical structural farce. So it was easy. You just fill the form. But with Thrust, I was in the space of navigating what does it mean to be in the present tense, stuck and alone and quarantined, looking backwards and forwards at the same time, letting go of time moorings. And so that helped the novel emerge because we were in this liminal space eventually.
Do any of the novels ever overlap, or are they completely separate?
I think they're always overlapping. I don't know if other novelists would cop to this or admit to this, but I think everything coming out of us is an overlapping of everything we've ever been or read or felt or where we're going. And we're just reaching for story forms. And maybe you hit it sometimes and other times not so much, but I think it's all overlapping.
I love that so much. So even though Thrust has a lot of mysterious kind of fantastical elements, there's also a lot about the world that we know. I was looking at your acknowledgements and how you thanked many people who helped with historical research. And so I was wondering how you chose to integrate those elements that you learned from speaking to people into this kind of complicated world with so many voices.
Oh, I love that question. So there's research elements, and I said earlier, my allegiance, for better or worse, was not to historical fact, which, by the way, is a set of stories from the people who won. Therefore, history is in liminal space for me in general. And I tried to write a story that asked, what if history swung around to the edges to the people who never get to have the story? So there's that. So there are historical, research elements that I both stayed intimate with and conjured around. And then there's something you wouldn't know unless I told you out loud. There are people I've had intimate relationships with who are the foundation for several of the characters in the book, as an homage, as an act of I love you. And again, no general reader is going to know that, but it helped me create it so that I can make love letters to laborers, to childless people, to mothers, to oppressed and repressed people I have known, to the people I was on road crew with when I had punishment after being arrested. You know, they're like love letter homages, but that piece is a little private. So tell no one. You heard it here, but it's like deep backstory. It's all research, really.
I mean, research, I think, is a topic that I know I get asked a lot by students, like how much research should I do before I start writing? Or how much research is too much research? Or I'll have students who say like, I get lost in the research and I never write. Yeah. So what would you say to writers who are dealing with that?
Well, I mean, I understand that because I fall into the vortex of research and I'm so happy. I mean, I miss my calling as my, I should have been alone in a room in my underwear just doing research. I love it so much. But it's not because I think I'm finding a fact. It's because I read research like novels and it makes me so happy. But what I would tell other people about getting into the research and also trying to make a story is that the research is like, they're the particulates or the sediments that you use to conjure your vision. And when you lose sight of that, you do get trapped in it and you go on and on. I'm researching in my 12th year, you know, like, but if you remember their sediments, you're plucking or culling. And then you return to your own vision, which the world doesn't encourage you to do. I'll give you that. But there are lots of us who help you stay true to your vision. If you treat them like you're collecting rocks or sediments and bring it to your vision, that's the balance to strive for. Maybe if that makes any sense to you.
That makes complete sense to me. It's so beautiful. It also makes me think about the structure of the book, because as I was reading it, I kind of mentally tried to draw like a diagram of what was happening and it made me completely crazy. So
I do
that. I was wondering, did the structure arise organically for you? Did you have some kind of complicated like map of how the structure worked, or how does that work for you?
Well, so I'll tell you one thing. He's wandered off to do something in the stacks, but this happens a lot. Andy Mingo is my creative partner and life partner and soulmate. I bring him the mess of my chaotic vision and he goes, "This is beautiful, baby, but no one on the planet who's human will be able to understand it. So you have to get some forms or shapes." So he helps. And in this particular book, for the first time in my life, he introduced the whiteboard.
Oh my God.
And I was so angry. We fought. Like, get that fucking thing out of my face. I am not using a whiteboard. What are you doing? That's like cards or an outline or something. I'm not doing that. But then he said, "Don't worry, we're gonna make bubbles." And so he made all these circles with the main themes going on.
Oh my God.
And what happened to me after I was pissed at him and enraged and did my little bee dance, when I looked at the bubbles, I could see the story. And so it was a magnificent gift that this person in my life gave me, to see the bubbles and go, "Oh, okay, those are the main pulses." So that's thing one. Thing number two is, you know, poems. Raise your hand if you've read a poem. Okay, it's gonna be okay. Because when you read a poem, they move in stanzas generally, and they move association by association, and they move image by image, And that's how the meaning making occurs. And they move by poetic affect in your body. And I'm trying to bring a poetics to prose. And so if you read the book at all, and I understand it's tricky, if you let go of plot and the hegemony of linear storytelling, and remember that storytelling happens in different forms all over the world, you'll be okay. Because that's how the story is emerging in these association by association. All you have to do is like follow an apple or follow a rope or follow these central images, and they repeat, they come up. And then there's this girl, Laiste, who's sort of like a helper, because she shows up more than once, and that's why I put her there, because I knew it would give people anxiety if I didn't use plot. But it's okay, because you've read a poem, you're going to be all right. It's fine.
I think that's so important because a lot of us, when we were growing up and learning about poems, were taught that poems are like a puzzle.
Yeah.
They're like something you have to solve. And what you're talking about is reading something and letting yourself feel
That's right.
something, you
That's
know,
right.
and instead of solving the puzzle.
Right.
of
It's
your-
not a brain. You're not smart enough. You get the right background. You don't get it. It's just, what do you feel in your body?
Yeah.
And can you follow that?
But I do hope that you took photos of this whiteboard because I
I
really-
totally did.
Okay, thank God. Okay.
I can send it to you.
Yes.
It's
Oh my
amazing.
God. I really want to.
There's
see it.
one bubble that says vagina apple. If you read it, you'll see. And I'm like, yes.
That's so brilliant. Okay, I love that so much. Okay, well, because you read a bit about the Statue of Liberty, I was wondering, what is your relationship to the Statue of Liberty? Like, what was the first time you saw it, or you know, what is your relationship to that?
The first time I saw it, I was like 7. And, you know, it was a tourist situation. And my father, who was our abuser, ruined the experience by getting mad at us. And I peed my pants. So it had an emotional imprint on me that is abstract and subconscious. And then in my 20s, I went back to see her, and I was trying to be such a badass in my 20s to break through the oppressive structures of my family, whatever. And so I went and I peed publicly in front of her, like to take my shit back.
This is the best story. I'm so glad I asked this question. Okay, keep going.
You know, like I showed everyone. Whatever, I just smelled like pee all day. But in my, you know, I'm 59, in case that matters. I've been thinking so much about what statues do and don't mean in our country right now, and what's going on with statues. And the research I did was so fascinating because of this. In the building of this iconic, gifted from France thing, the story could have gone anywhere. It had so many possibilities, and it didn't go places it could have. It went this other place, which was about power and money and erasing the shackles thing. The shackles ended up at her feet, in case you don't know that. And the Emma Lazarus poem that was added later, that's at the bottom. If you actually study it and read it, it's a deconstruction of power and pomp and a welcoming of immigrants and humans who are not the power structure. And even that, to this day, isn't what the so-called symbol is jutting up with. And so it's not like the Statue of Liberty is some huge thing to me, but given that our country is deconstructing itself, possibly annihilating itself, this figure of this woman rising out of the sea that could have been any story, seems like a possibility space. to just look at and ask questions over again, is what I'd say.
It's written about so beautifully in the book, and I'm really excited that all of you will be reading this book. Another thing that I noticed in the book that recurs a lot is water, which is also something that recurs a lot in your work in general.
You noticed this.
Yes, I'm very brilliant, and I noticed this water thing. And so there's like a lot of swimming, and there's a lot of water, and how I was just curious, what did I even write as my question? How would you describe your relationship to water and how water and swimming appear in Thrust?
Well, it has like 17 answers, but I'm not, don't worry, don't panic. Worry with that. At this point in my life, water is a creative source or realm or metaphor or symbol for the imagination, the endlessness of imagination. It's also the realm of, let me say it like this, and you picture a wave: life, death, life, death, life, death, life, death, instead of a line with life at the start and death at the end. And when the ocean spits shit up on the shore, it's both alive things and dead things. And that helps me tell stories that aren't stuck in a trap of a plot that is uninteresting to me and dangerous and brutal at its worst. I can tell stories that recur or make circles or have no resolutions because my life has not had those things, nor has have the lives of anyone I love. And so water has become this space of storytelling and imagination, no matter what it was to me as a child or a competitive swimmer or any of those things.
It makes me think of my therapist who talks about healing as being a spiral, not like a straight line.
Yeah.
And how you are basically in the same place, but you're like a little bit further out, or like
Right.
a little bit further in. And so what you were saying about the way waves help you form stories.
Oh, it's
So,
everything
yeah.
to me. For that reason, my therapist says this. Like, there it is again, but you get
Yeah.
another chance. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
yeah.
Here's the wave again. But also for me, if I just go stand at the lip of the ocean or any waterway bigger than myself, I remember I'm the particulate. And there's always an existence larger than myself. I know I'm not the first person to think of that, but in case someone's hurting right now, it's a wonderful way to remind yourself we're puny, but that's a good thing. We're a sediment or a particulate of an existence larger than us. So, you know, some idiot grabbing the wheel of the car trying to get to the Capitol building to say, I'm the man, is meaningless in a larger story called existence.
And we're still alive.
We are. You're here. You stood up. We heard you. You were polyphonic.
You also do I don't even know what to call it, like a school called corporeal writing. And I was looking at the website and kind of all the classes, and I was so touched and overwhelmed by it. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you started it and what it means to you.
Sure. There are people here who have been cross paths with us in ways that make me cry. I'm so happy. It started when I left academia. And I left academia for disgruntlement and access reasons. I was watching what academia was turning into, and corporeal writing as whatever it is, I don't know, school, it could be a school of fish. I like that.
I love that.
Whatever it is, it came from a desire to make access for creative souled humans who may not be able to afford to go to college, or may not want to go to college, or just came out of jail or rehab, or were a certain age and thought it was over, or weren't old enough, or, you know, the obstacles to the idea you could go create something. Corporeal writing is just a space we wrestled open that anyone could walk into and sit next to anyone else and create and not have the world tell you you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you don't have the right paperwork, etc. And miraculously, we're still alive. I don't know how long that's going to last, but the idea is creativity in collective is not nothing.
I would highly recommend any of you who are interested in
Come.
writing. Yeah, join, come explore. It's really fun. The water's fine. How would you describe the arc of your oeuvre to somebody who's unfamiliar with your work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wait, I'm thinking briefly. I swam vigorously and deeply in the traditions we all inherit from our various positions and places. And then I swam vigorously and deeply in the traditions I was not given that were more global and not made available to me. And I took everything I learned and thought, what do I have to offer as a small tributary that leads to the larger river that leads to the ocean of storytelling? And what I came up with is I have to make my own forms because I can't tell the stories I want to tell in the forms I've been given, even with all that rich education and experience. And so that's what I've been doing. And what I would tell someone else is swim in all the oceans of the traditions, swim in traditions no one's willing to tell you about, find the forms that make you happy, and then ask your body, what's true for me and what forms come from there and the community I'm from. And then fucking invent them because the world's not going to give you a pass. You have to just make it. And you're what's coming next. It's not me. It's you. And so the agency is yours. You're what's coming next. So what will your forms look like is my question.
What is your favorite thing that someone has said about your work?
Now I'm all shy.
No, you got it.
Okay. Boobs forward. Oh, I know what it is that I dared. Just really simple, that I dared.
That's so beautiful, though.
Meaning you could fail, and that's okay.
I think without failure, there's no exploration.
Agree.
Yeah. So, this will seem like a random question, but we're all kind of here, and people are wearing masks, and we haven't had like in-store events for so long. Like, how do you feel like you have been making it through the pandemic, or like what have you been holding on to, or what do you think you should be holding on to?
Well, plants and animals got bigger and louder and more wonderful and reminded us that we're not the center of the universe. Does anybody else feel like that happened? Or yeah, that was huge for me. It's not like we didn't know that. I'm just saying it got louder and we got reminded again. You're puny. Figure out where you are in the larger story. And so that was important for me. And I'm going to be honest with you, maybe you agree with this. I don't know. You can tell me. The quarantine periods for someone who's an introvert and who has non-neuronormative things going on and who has health things going on, it was a moment in time where the whole world got to see what it was like to live on different terms. The world regularly is structured for socially adept people and people without the things I just named. And we have to live it and navigate and pass. And for this weird moment of time, that was flipped. And I guess what I want to say about that is I hope some of you learned something. I hope you see us differently or hear us differently. And then the third thing I'd say is I feel as if a new form of intimacy has been born, and I hope we explore it. So those three things.
That's amazing. I was thinking a lot during the beginning of the pandemic when people were saying like, oh my God, I've never been at home for so long, but without going out and whatever. And I was
Exactly.
thinking like, oh, this is how I live normally.
Exactly.
Like
hello.
Yeah. But there were also these like beautiful things that were happening. Like I wrote a piece for New York Times Magazine about how theater was going online. And I don't, we don't live in like New York or London. But I was getting to see these
It
plays.
was beautiful.
Yeah, and I saw like Oscar Isaac and Marissa Tomei like on Skype with their AirPods, like performing Beirut. And it was just so wonderful to have that access. And now I wonder, are we going to lose that? But this is being aired online too. So
I know, hello.
Yeah.
You know who's out there? It's my sister. We love you, Bridget.
Yeah, and so all of you are here, which is so great, but also we have this microphone here so that we can broadcast our thoughts across.
But it's an adaptation possibility. Please don't let it slip away what we've learned. I don't know what I'm saying right now, but it feels like it's gonna, it could slip back into like, okay, everything's back to normal. I don't want everything to go back to normal. I think we have a chance to learn what just happened and become different creatures.
Oh, yes, exactly. I think I have time for, maybe like one more question. I've been wondering, what have you been reading lately? Like what is there anything you've been reading lately that you really love?
You. I'm sorry, it's so true. I couldn't help that, I'm sorry. Really, if you haven't read everything she's ever written, please do so tonight. I'm very much into Alexis Pauline Gumbs right now. I'm very much into writers who are crisscrossing what we used to think of as specialties or discourses and figuring out how to tell like the anthropology story with storytelling, the neuroscience story with storytelling, the different disciplines crisscrossing because everyone's starting to realize, holy shit, we have to keep telling the stories in ways people will understand them from our different ways of seeing the world. And so it's not always literary people I'm reading because I'm looking for, okay, who's telling this part of the story? Who's telling this part? And like a book I love by Magnuson called Of Time and Water tells a water story from an anthropology perspective that like gets us a little closer. So what I would encourage other people to do is broaden your idea of storytelling to move beyond literature, because that's what's going to help us reconnect in these times where we've been severed and truncated and pitted against each other. To look for storytelling broader than just literature.
Yeah. It's important, and two, that there is all of this stuff that,
that's exciting.
That's something very exciting is happening back there.
It's storytelling.
Yes,
Polyphonic.
listen to the storytelling. It's so important, I think.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. It's totally fine.
They're FaceTiming me and I told them I was going to.
But what you were just saying is like pay attention, right? Like,
Yeah.
pay attention to everything, not just the few books that you've been told to read, or
yes,
So I think pay attention is a great way to end that. And so I was wondering if the audience had any questions after I've asked my silly questions. Feel free to raise your hand. Yes.
hi.
Okay, I have to repeat the question I was told. So they said, I really appreciate how you talked about poetic affect and prose, and what is your relationship with poetry? I hope I did okay.
That was perfect. I can't apparently write a poem to save my life. But my, back to the question of what traditions or education did you have? Poetry moved me first because poetry bears witness and speaks in a language that matches up with my internal understanding of the world. It's like someone invented a language that makes sense to me. And I'm often trying to have regular conversations. This is why I'm such a bust at parties or social events. I try to have conversations with people and I'm speaking in weird poetic abstracts and they're like, great. And small talk, I have no idea what that is, but it's excruciating. So poetry is a language for me that feels like my inside has expression, but I'm not good at making it. And so as a storyteller, I'm kind of borrowing or participating in that most exquisite form to try and make a bridge to you, the reader, in my own weird way. And if that answers the question, something like that.
But it also reminds me of how sometimes you might be very familiar with the language and you can understand it when other people are speaking, but you yourself cannot
I
form.
can't do it back.
Yeah.
can't
cannot
do it
form
back.
Sentences. That's how
I try. I'm like,
Yeah.
apple.
Yeah, that's how I am with Taiwanese. So that makes absolute sense to me. Does anyone else have a question? Yes.
How is it as a writer? You're so prolific, and I think I have this nosy question, which is, what is it like for you mood-wise in your room when you're writing? Do you go through many moods? Does stuff mostly pour out of you? I guess that's my question.
Okay, so
Because you're so inspiring for people online for years. As I did a workshop with you maybe 6 or so years ago with Jen Pasteloff and my
Yeah.
friend Elizabeth Aquino.
Yeah.
And so I would be down, and he would write something on Facebook and people, you just felt like, I hope. So then I think, what is it like for you?
Okay, I will have a hard time repeating that. So basically, you're extremely prolific. And do you have, what is it, the experience like for you as you write regarding your mood-wise? How is that process for you?
Okay. First, can I just glory in your hands? The way you talk with your hands, that's so beautiful. That makes sense to me. Could you just keep doing that? I'm mesmerized.
Small talk.
Totally. If only. If people would just do that, I'd be fine. Can't handle it. I hope this feels like a satisfactory answer for you, but I kind of write or draw or paint or create in something like a trance state or a fever dream in a room I make in my home. Used to be a closet, could have been the bus at one time in my life, but now I have a room. And to be quite honest with you, if I didn't have important reasons to come out of that state that include primary relationships and my son, I wouldn't. I'm so much more whole and calm and free in the creative space. My difficulty is being in the world. So when I write something or I post something or I make an expression, that's my internal landscape, emerging in the hopes that one person might benefit from it or hear me, because I've spent a lot of time feeling alone and wrong. But the struggle for me is to be regular person in regular world. So that's, boy, I would stay there. I would, which is not necessarily a good thing.
Lydia, I want to ask a question of you for all the writers and the artists in the room who are actively creating new art at this moment. When you get to that space, when somebody tells you that's your director, you need to open a new space. You need to open a couple new spaces in the script or the manuscript or the painting. what guidance would you give as an artist in that room to open those new spaces up when you don't know what the spaces are?
As a writer and an artist, if you are guided or directed to open new spaces in your work, how do you go about doing that when they don't previously exist? Is that,
Or you don't know what.
or you don't know what
You
they
don't know
are?
what the new space is.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm suspicious of guidance. I'm a hard case.
We were talking about our editor earlier.
So when the directives come, the first thing that happens to me is, oh, a misguided soul. A little bit. I just mean a little bit. And there's something to two things. The form of Aikido. My husband's gonna roll his eyes back. See, he's rolling his eyes. Where you take the directive energy and you move it, you know, so that it's not forcing you to respond, but you're transforming the energy. And there's something in that concept or that image of not letting the energy overcome you or dictate or direct you, but to like let it move through you more like water moves. Sorry about all the water. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, man, you know this is true, Linda. Each of you and us, we're the only people on the planet who see things the way we see them or feel things the way we feel them, to use a different sense. So don't let anyone take that away from you. And if you get asked to go farther or open up new spaces in your own work, instead of saying, oh, how do I open up a new space? Just close your eyes, go into that meditative place and ask vision questions or make a mood board and see what color it is, or see what landscape it is, or see, you know, who shows up ancestor-wise. Gertrude Stein is showing up a lot for me. I'm like, what? Why? Oh, rearrangements of language. And so trust yourself, understand you have the only vision. You have the only vision. It's you. And so it's not from what they direct or they say. You have to go swim some more. You have to go meditate some more. You have to go mood board some more or draw or whatever it is you particularly do to get it. But don't think of it literally. When they say unpack page 7, say, that's nice, and go do whatever it is you need to do to create your own creative solution. Because only you know the answer. It's not going to come from the outside, no matter how smart the person is giving you the advice.
Gertrude Stein has been showing up a lot for me too, so I wonder if she's just kind of traveling and just like doing this
She's
thing.
like, okay, get it together.
Oh, that was such a beautiful answer. Okay, yes.
So it's my understanding that you didn't get your start in getting published very early in your career, that it was later in your life. And so I'm curious, what was it for you that changed internally so that you dared?
Having published later in your life, what changed for you internally so that you were able to make that leap into daring?
That's a cool question. And I hope this is an okay answer. I think I was already convinced nothing was going to happen. And so I was already going to stand on the street corner and make pamphlets at Kinko's and hand them out and yell it with half my head shaved. And I thought that was the deal. And I was happy with that. I thought that was fucking awesome. And then I had this kind of garage band aesthetic when we started our first zine. And so since that was my foundation and where I started, and the artists I adored the most started that way too, that publishing happened. It didn't mesmerize me or trick me into buying my own hype. It still hasn't. Because I would go back on the corner tomorrow if this whole shithouse comes down and, you know, this writing thing tanks. I would go back on the corner tomorrow because I actually believe in the ground. Maybe that's the sentence. I actually believe in the ground more than I believe in the economy. And so that this is happening, that's hilarious. And if it helps me help other people, then it's a lateral agency that's badass and I'm willing to participate. But you see what I mean? If that's where I came from, it's like, yeah, that's cool, but you know, so I'm infiltrating and agitating. And if a fracture happens where I need to shovel shit, that's fine. I'll go. It's fine. I'm ready. It's our turn. It's okay.
Like dissolution of the ego.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Ego is bullshit. And it will mess you up.
Yeah.
Ask what the person next to you needs and how the art you're creating could be in service of that. And you'll slip sometimes too and not do it quite right, but that's okay.
Thank you. How are we doing on time? Okay, one more question. One lucky person will get to ask a question. Yes.
Hi, something I've always been curious about is the writing process. I'm sure this could be true for some writers, but have you ever felt frustrated with your work and how you navigated that?
Have you ever felt frustrated with your work, which I'm sure never happened? And how do you navigate
I love you. Every nanosecond of my life. Or, you know, I mean, maybe that's not true. Like you can get really high the night you're doing it, and then you're like, this is so great. And I mean, either literally get high or you're just high in the process. And then the next morning you wake up and you're like, oh my God, what happened? What is this? Don't ever show it to anyone. It's terrible. I think that frustration and doubt and what am I doing? Who do I think I am is the writerly or artistic default. And here's the good news. It's how you know you're onto something. Because you're not walking around like a cocky asshole thinking you understand it. And so that hurts and it's hard to overcome. Every single day it's hard to overcome. But please hear me when I say you're not alone. And if you can find even 1, 2, or 3 people, but even one person that you can call or show your stuff to, who goes, I know, what? Terrible. No, wait, that was cool. It helps us keep each other alive, and we take turns with the depression and frustration. We like take turns and hand it off to each other and keep each other going. And so if you don't have that, we're here. I'm slutty, I'm easy to find. Esmé runs workshops that are incredible that you could find and work with her anytime. I've looked at them, mesmerized. But do you agree with that? That
Oh, absolutely.
you find like that you're great.
No, that you're frustrated every nanosecond of your existence. But I do agree in those really magnificent moments when you're like, I'm a genius. Like, this is amazing. And you look at it later and you're like, what is this nonsense?
But those moments are so glorious because you're in the suite. You're in the suite of pure creation and it's fucking beautiful. And you only feel it for 10 seconds, but so what?
It's so worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Thank you so much for your genius.
Thank you
so
for
much
yours.
being here. Thank you, everybody. I will talk about book signing, I believe.
Yeah, totally. Let's give it up one more time for Lidia Yuknavitch. Would you like to stand up and go over there? It's up to you. And people can come to you regardless.
I have to go tinkle.
Oh, I mean, you can take your time. You don't have to do it immediately.
It's fine. I
Okay.
didn't quite mean to announce that. But here's my,
Thank you for connecting us all this evening, both of you. I'm so appreciative, and I so appreciate all of you coming out. So we're gonna take a couple minutes, and
I'm
if
fast.
you folks want to, we have copies of Thrust available at the front. You can purchase them there, and then we'll just make a signing line at the table back here. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, and thank you, everyone.
thank you.